Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about what is seemingly becoming a very common issue on the Cadillac XT5. So today we're going to be discussing the thermostat issues that have been plaguing a large number of XT5s on the road. So like the start-stop video that I put out a few months ago, this video is going to be a little bit different than most of my videos in that we're not going to sit here and do the repairs ourselves, but I am going to give you all of the information you need to properly troubleshoot, diagnose this issue. So don't turn away from the video just yet. There's going to be a lot of valuable information here. What I find is that if you are going to have this repair, or really any repair done by a dealership, it is really a good idea to go in there and know, almost know more about the problem than they do. And that, I have found that reduces the odds of going back and forth and having them just throw fixes at the wall. And, it's going to save a lot of aggravation. So there's going to be a wealth of information I have collected about this problem, as well as my own experience with this problem. And we will talk a little bit about the repair process as well. So let's dive into it. Okay, so first let's talk about the symptoms that I saw, as well as some other symptoms that have been reported out there. By far the most common symptom that you will see is the steering assist reduced drive with care error message on the screen. And so, which is kind of a strange message to get when you're having a thermostat problem. And I'll talk more about that in just a moment, but I got that error on my screen. So my first symptom was about a week or so before this. I was having intermittent problems with the start-stop, or the auto-stop feature. And so the problem I was having this time around was not that it wasn't working at all, but that the duration of the stops were quite short. In other words, if I stopped at a red light, instead of the start-stop, or instead of the engine stopping for the duration of the red light or close to it, it might only shut the engine off for 2 or 3 seconds and then come back on again, which of course that doesn't really do a lot of good. So that was my first symptom. Some other users out there have reported that the auto stop system stops working entirely. I didn't experience that, but mine was just intermittently acting squirrely. The next symptom that I experienced was that I noticed when I was, sitting idle, like when I stopped the car and put it into park, is that the radiator fans were running at 100%, or it sounded like it. It sounded like the car was about to take off. So there was that, and then also the coolant temperature gauge on the dash would show. Now my dash might look a little different than yours because this is the platinum trim, but on mine it would be all the way at the cold side. Some users report getting some sort of a temperature gauge warning, and I assume there's different ways that the temperature gauge and warnings work on different trim levels. The platinum kind of had this special gauge cluster layout that's different from all the other trim levels, so yours is probably going to look a little different. But on mine, the little needle would be all the way at the bottom, at the cold end of the spectrum. And then what I would notice is that if I would drive for a few miles, oftentimes that would all of a sudden just pop back up to the normal reading, which is right around the middle. And so obviously something was getting stuck with the thermostat, or at least that's what it seems to be. And so the other symptom that I had was the error code P0128 was set. Now I didn't get a check engine light, I just happened to plug my code reader in and find that message. So the P0128 is a powertrain fault code, and it says coolant thermostat, coolant temperature below thermostat regulating temperature. So that was a code that was set during the period I was having these problems. So some other common issues, like I mentioned before, some users mention that they get some sort of a temperature gauge warning. I did not have that. And some other drivers have reported no AC, or the AC not working properly. I don't know that I experienced that or not, to be honest, because it was pretty cold out, so I wasn't using the AC. So, but that's another common problem. Now back to the most common symptom, which is the steering assist is reduced, drive with care message. I want to talk about that for a second because that's really confusing. Why is that a thermostat problem? And I think this is really key for helping point you in the right direction with the dealer. So there is a service bulletin that directly addresses this problem. Service bulletins are things that GM releases that they see that are common enough that they feel that they need to have the dealers know about it so they know which direction to go. It's different from a recall. I see this all the time. People, they should issue a recall. Recalls almost never get issued unless the manufacturer's hand is forced on the matter, and that's almost always going to be to do with a safety issue. So it could happen, but I would be shocked if there's a recall issued over the thermostat issue because it's technically not a safety issue, even though there's a large number of them failing. So we'll see, but time and time again I see, they should recall this, they should recall this. But what you really want to look for to help pinpoint the problem with the dealer is not so much a recall, unless it's a safety issue, but a service bulletin. So the service bulletin is bulletin number 17-NA158. This was actually issued back in May of 2017. This says it covers the 2017 XT5 and GMC Acadia. Although really it's going to affect, as far as I can tell, any GM vehicle with the LGX engine in it. And so I'll talk more about the part number and what vehicles are actually covered. But here we go. So why does the steering assist reduced message have anything to do with the thermostat? So let's look at this information here in this service bulletin. So it says the steering assist reduced issue is caused by an invalid coolant temp signal from the ECM. The steering module looks for a valid coolant temperature so it can compensate for cold and thick grease. As grease gets cold, it becomes thicker and harder to move. This can cause a heavier than normal steering feel. The steering module, when it thinks it is cold due to the coolant temperature valve, provides extra assist to support heavier conditions. Since the coolant valve on the CAN bus went invalid, this function of the steering module went inoperative. So basically, because the thermostat is malfunctioning and sending information that is not valid back to the computer, it's affecting other systems that rely on that coolant temperature reading. So that's why you see that. So kind of crazy, but it kind of makes sense when you drill down with it. So the two bits of information that are really going to help you point the dealer in the right direction is one, if you can get a code reader. If you don't have one or have, most of the AutoZones or Advanced will pull the codes for free. And if you have that thermostat, error code that we talked about earlier in the history, that will help, point them in the right direction. And the other would be this technical service bulletin. I mean, that pretty much nails it. So those two things are some really good bits of information, along with all your other symptoms, because all that counts too. So first, before we talk about how to fix the problem on your own, let's talk about how to get the problem fixed for free, because that's what we all really want to know about. So this obviously would be covered by your bumper-to-bumper warranty, which is 4 years or 50,000 miles, whichever comes first. However, this will also be covered by your powertrain warranty. So if you're out of your bumper-to-bumper, you may, and you still have powertrain warranty, which is 6 years or 70,000 miles. So this is covered by that. My dealership confirmed it. There's language in the manual that confirms it. So you can call Cadillac if your dealership's giving you a hard time. Call the 1-800 Cadillac number, and they will confirm that this is the case. So basically, as long as your XT5 is no more than 6 years or 70,000 miles, whichever number is, whichever comes first, then the dealer has to cover this under warranty. So a lot of people are confused about warranties. Real quick, I see this a lot. You know, you don't have to be the original owner of the vehicle. You don't have to take it back to the original dealership. Any Cadillac dealership will cover it. You know, like I said, whether you're the first owner or the 17th owner, it's going to be covered. And technically, you can actually take it to any GM dealership. So if you have like a Chevrolet dealership, technically they need to honor that warranty as well, or they have to honor that as well. You know, personally, if you have a Cadillac dealership, that's probably the simpler way to go because they're used to working on these vehicles. But as we're going to talk about here in just a second, this part number is common to a lot of the vehicles that GM makes. So you know, it's going to, you know, chances are a lot of GM dealerships are going to be familiar with it. So let's talk about the part. Now, when I was doing some research on this part, I was really confused because all the common parts lookup sites that I use didn't even have a thermostat listing, which is just crazy because, you know, you think a thermostat is a very basic part of a car. But what GM calls it in this case is a water outlet instead of a thermostat. Basically the reason for that is that the thermostat is actually bolted onto a large transfer pipe that goes across the top of the engine. And when you buy the thermostat, it comes already bolted onto this pipe. So you cannot buy just the thermostat. You're buying the thermostat and the pipe together. And so they call that the water outlet as a complete unit. Now, you can separate the two and replace just the thermostat, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. But that's how it comes. That's what it looks like. The part number, which I've got here on the screen, and I'll have all kinds of information in the video description below, is 1267879. And one other note is this part, there's been major as of, you know, time of filming, there are major availability issues with this part. I would highly recommend that when you start having a conversation with your dealer, you know, don't make the mistake I did. I said, when I called them ahead of time, I said, well, do you think you're going to have any trouble getting this part? And they're going, oh, a thermostat, that's no big deal. Well, the service advisor is thinking about just normal thermostats, you know, and this is kind of an unusual type of a setup. And so I ended up pressing them further, and I said, look, can you just look up this part number and see, you know, see if you have it. And in my case, it was on back order. So, you know, in my case, thankfully, the dealer, my dealership was great and managed to track one down in a few days. But I've seen reports of weeks and months. So you really want to have that conversation at the beginning, so that you kind of have an idea of how long you're going to be without your car, because it's really not a good idea to drive your vehicle like this. All right, let's talk more about this part number real quick. So the service bulletin is referring to the 2017 Cadillac XT5 as well as the 2017 GMC Acadia. But as you can see on this vehicle fitment page, our vehicle fitment list for this part fits the 2017 Cadillac XT5 all the way through the 2020 Cadillac XT5. It does not mention the 2021. I'd have to do some digging on that. But you know, it's definitely the large percentage of them that are on the road. I think the 2021 they had they had a different engine option too, so that might be part of it. But it also fits. It looks like some of the XT6s. You know, like I said, Acadia, a bunch of Buick vehicles. So, I mean, there's obviously a lot of vehicles on the road that this fits, and so you know, it's gonna cover most of the XT5s. There is a really handy video that talks about doing this on the GMC Acadia, which is it's the same engine, and if you look under the hood, it looks almost identical to the XT5. So it's actually a pretty decent video on the topic. You know, I will probably make a step-by-step video eventually. You know, in my case, I had it done by the dealership because it was free and it was under warranty. But because this part failed in my case, 43,000 miles in, I would expect, unless they've improved the part, that I probably will face this again in my ownership of this vehicle. And once it's out of warranty, I'll probably just do it myself. So it may have that video on the channel, but we'll talk a little bit. We'll look under the hood of mine here in a minute and get a little bit better of an idea. But this video too that I'm linking to is in the video description below is shows a lot of information about the do-it-yourself process. The official process from Cadillac has you pulling the fuel rails so that you can replace the entire assembly, including the transfer pipe. So you've got to take a large chunk of the top of the engine apart, and it's a pretty involved job. But as this other video mentions, you can actually do it by separating the two parts, and it still looks like a big job and a pain in the butt, but it's not quite as bad if you separate the two parts. Now, there have been some unofficial polls done on some of the various Cadillac forums and boards online, and so far it seems like this is affecting primarily the 2017s. That seems to be about 75% of the vehicles in this unofficial poll. There are some 18s that would be spot number 2 as far as the most common, and then 2019s on the list as well. But I think that just is because, of the various ages of the vehicles. Obviously, the 2017s have been out there longer, so you're going to see more failures, and then the 2019s next, and so on and so forth. So this is going to be an ongoing issue unless Cadillac redesigns the part, which as far as I know, they have not. It's the same part number it was from the beginning, so unless they've just quietly improve the part, it's the same one that came on it from the factory, so you probably are going to have failure again. Looking at some of these unofficial polls, the mileage is all over the place, but some dirty math shows the average is around 53,000 miles. That's the average failure point. Mine was at 43,000. Obviously, there's some much higher numbers on the list, but that seems to be the average from this unofficial poll and some quick and dirty math, so take that with a heavy grain of salt. So just a quick view of the engine on the XT5, just so you can get a general idea of what we're talking about. So the thermostat is on the top passenger side of the engine over on this side, and then there's a heat transfer pipe that runs along the top of the engine. So, all, the air box and all this would have to come off to get to that. And like I said, there's another video that kind of shows that process that's linked below. But let's take a closer look and see if we can sort of make that out. All right, so we're over on the driver's side of the engine. And if you look real close, right here in the middle of the screen, you can kind of see, and I'm having a hard time getting any closer and getting the camera to focus, but you can kind of see that the start of that heat transfer pipe, the curve as it curves to the left over top of the engine, and then we've got a radiator hose connected to it at the bottom. And so let's go over to the other side and see if we can spot the thermostat. All right, so I've had to go handheld here, but right in the middle of your screen, buried down the way at the bottom in that valley, is that little silver thing down there. That's the thermostat. So you can see that it's quite involved to get out of there. Even using the arguably better method shown in the video I linked below, that's still going to be quite a job. And so this is going to be the reason that if you're out of warranty and take it to the dealership, it's not going to be a cheap repair. Alrighty guys, that about does it for this video. Again, I apologize that it's not as detailed as I usually get as far as showing you step by step the repair process, but I see this questions about this issue come up time and time again, and at this point, so many people are still under warranty that I figured hopefully some of you might benefit from being able to go to your dealership armed with the information that you need to get this repair done. Or at least this will point you in the right direction if you want to repair it yourself or take it to a third-party repair shop. So that about does it for now. I hope you guys will consider subscribing to the channel. I do have some more XT5 content coming up soon. In fact, I hope to be at least filming one additional video this weekend, and then a third one coming up in the weeks ahead. I've got some new little projects coming up, so stay tuned. Thanks for watching.